And we are back with another live stream. Welcome to the Boxing Squared live stream Friday night here in New Zealand. Wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you're doing well. And on the show tonight, I thought I would talk about a number of subjects, but obviously I can't ignore what happened last Saturday night in the United States. Tyson Fury takes the WBC title from Deontay Wilder. So just waiting for a few people to jump into the chat here, and if you can hear me loud and clear, just give me a bit of a shout. Always seems to be a little bit of a lag here with the Streamlabs technology I've got. Okay, so we've got someone in the chat there. Hello, Chris. He says, what's happening down under? We've got Creasus33. Hey there, Boxing Squared. Hello back to you too. So 9:33 here in New Zealand at the moment, and it's been an interesting week, especially with all the new people coming to the channel. A lot of people can't really discern an accent, so always get blanketed in as coming from the UK. Not that that's a bad thing, but people are always so surprised when I have to say, well, actually, no, I'm from New Zealand, because often people make assumptions based on the statements, thinking it's based off a UK type of point of view, but it certainly takes care of some arguments pretty quickly. So what I wanted to do first was a few thoughts that I've just jotted down in the last sort of 15 minutes before I came live, and then I had to sort of deal with the fan, which I hope isn't too noisy in the background. One of the blades sheared off, so it's a bit noisier than it normally is. So we've got a few more people in the chat here. John Daly, Slayer, L-Dog, Peter, The Truth, all good morning. So what I'll do first, got a few notes that I just wanted to effectively read as different thoughts and perspective on the fight, the week that was, and just in general, because obviously Deontay Wilder coming in for a lot of criticism, and the stuff around the excuses, yeah, I'm fine with that, because that is open slather, because a lot of it is ridiculous. But some of the criticism of him as a fighter, I think people have written him off completely, which is maybe at their peril. He can still do stuff in the heavyweight division. That one hitter quitter can still win fights for him. Maybe not against Tyson Fury, but against others in the division. But so the WBC belt, it changed hands. Great performance by Tyson Fury. Laid his plan out for the world to see, executed it on the night. Outthought, outworked, outhustled, and outclassed Deontay Wilder, who barely fired a shot. It has left an indelible moment for the sport. We haven't really sort of had one of those for a little while. And Fury has received worldwide recognition, the sort of acclaim that he failed to receive back in 2015 for one reason or another. Unfortunately, some of the aftermath, the afterglow of the win, it was actually cut short by Deontay Wilder and his litany of excuses. It's become like a self-licking ice cream. The more excuses he comes out with, the stronger the reaction throughout the week. And the worst of the excuses, the biggest clangor of them all, the costume excuse, which might be the worst excuse for a loss that I've heard in a really long time. And a lot of trainers have come out publicly saying if he couldn't wear that for that short length of time, then something was wrong with his training in his camp. And the sad part is, Wilder has been torpedoing his own reputation. He's taking credit away from Fury, but also himself. People are forgetting how much heart Deontay Wilder showed to hang in there for so long. He took quite a beating over a number of rounds. I thought the stoppage was good. Wilder, he was done. The ref, Kenny Bayless, has even stated he was close to stepping in when the towel came in, which he says he saw from the corner of his eye. Mark Breland looks like he's looking for another job, will be shown the door at some point by the look of it. Deontay Wilder off on a holiday in March, says he will mull things over and work out what to do next, especially with Breland after he gets back. And I did read an article today saying that Breland was outside the changing room after the fight crying because he was barred from coming in. That was a piece that was quoting Spencer Fearon. But it looks like this rodeo will be run back again. The event got upwards of 800,000 buys alone in the US. How much demand there will be for a third fight, given the convincing result of the second, is unclear. I think it might do a bit less. I don't know. Will Deontay Wilder be able to have an honest look at why he lost? The changes that he needs to make. But even then, if he does all that, is it enough? Will it be enough? But we've seen guys come back from devastating losses before and win. So it's a case of repeat or revenge. He's always going to have a shot with the right hand, but maybe most people are going to be picking Fury in the third fight. Wilder will be a pretty big underdog, I'd imagine. And I'd also note, for those who've written Wilder off completely or said that he was never anything, if that's the case, how can we give Tyson Fury the credit that he's getting right now? And I know that Wilder is not everyone's favourite cup of tea, but he's achieved more than most in the sport. Bronze medal, heavyweight title, 10 defences, multi-millionaire. He likely still beats a lot of top heavyweights. Let's face it, there's not many 6'9" Tyson Fury types running around who can move on a swivel, and it's just really a rarity, the sort of talent that Tyson Fury is. He's got the height, and you can't teach that, and he's got the skills. And we saw skills pay the bills with execution. And I'm completely okay, as I mentioned at the start of this little monologue, with people trashing Deontay Wilder's embarrassing excuses. But on the fighting front, I do think in general, with his career, he deserves a bit more respect than maybe he's got this week. There's been quite a bit of vitriol from people who want to rub it in. But obviously, he's a prideful guy. He said a number of things in the past, and some people believe that he had some comeuppance this week, and obviously the excuses didn't help. But that was effectively all I wanted to say in terms of my major points from the fight and the aftermath. That was my notes that I jotted down there. So I'll get back to the chat. Okay, where am I? So the truth says not noisy here. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I moved it back a couple of meters because it was right up near me. It's quite muggy here at the moment and it was loud. So Chris says, is Joseph Parker fighting this weekend? He is. That'll be one of my first topics that I get to. I will preview that. Heavy D says, good morning. Good morning to you too. Morning to Callum from Nottingham. Chris says, what are your thoughts on Wilder's excuses? Well, I did sort of cover that in the monologue there to some extent, but it's rather embarrassing. He's obviously, his pride, his ego, it's dented. He needs to come up with some sort of reason to explain away the loss. But he needs to have an honest look at himself. Otherwise, if he can't make changes and if he can't be honest with himself, how can he improve? How can he change for the third fight? Because remember, going into this rematch, JD said they weren't doing anything different. All they were going to do was do it better. Clearly that didn't work. Effectively what we saw was the strategy which he employed for Luis Ortiz, which was hang back, wait for an opportunity, and it didn't work. So they need to go back to the drawing board. So DJ DQ is in the house. Hello to you. Heavy D says the Ring Magazine rankings are looking kind of fair for Wilder. He now needs to fight more top 10 heavyweights and rebuild. Well, I see him taking the rematch, so I think that he will always believe that he's got a chance against Tyson Fury in any fight. And after that second fight, a lot of people will doubt that. But if they fought 10 times, he might win a couple of them because of his punching power, or maybe even more than a couple. Maybe I'm not doing him justice. He's going to get a few wins because of the right hand. We saw him catch up with Fury the first time around, so it's not like he can't hit Tyson Fury. But in the rematch, he wasn't able to catch him flush. He hit him with a couple that were pretty decent, but Fury was riding some of those shots, and he didn't really quite hit him the same way as he did for that 12th round knockdown in the first fight. So Callum says the fight was fixed as Shane got the lads to line Wilder's costume with lead to tire him out. I haven't heard that one, but that's yeah, some of the excuses this week, like the Darrell, one from that he influenced his corner to throw in the towel. I mean, you could say that about anyone in the crowd yelling out, stop the fight, throw in the towel. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And the more that he opened his mouth, it sounded silly. And I've actually had people coming to the channel trying to now say that Deontay Wilder's never said any of these things, or it was said in a private conversation and wasn't meant for public consumption. But the fact he said it to multiple reporters kind of indicates he did say it. He was okay with it being published, and there has been no retraction of that. So yeah, and I've seen a number of, it's almost like for the first few days, Deontay Wilder's supporters, especially the very hardcore supporters, disappeared from the internet, weren't seen. But now they've started to gather some talking points and respond, and trying to say that loaded gloves and other bits and pieces. Oh, he cheated, other bits and. I guess some of this, if this is how they cope with the loss, okay. I mean, we see this after different losses, and I was talking about this in a video on Patreon this week. I think after the Andy Ruiz loss, there was a bit of that. Some of Ruiz's fan base just disappeared altogether. And there was the odd person saying, if he was in shape. And obviously after Anthony Joshua lost, some Joshua supporters were making all manner of excuses. So it does happen, but ultimately what matters now is what Wilder does to change, to try remedy what went wrong. And maybe there is nothing he can do. But it's a fight, anything can happen. So where are we here in the chat? Kind of go off on these little tangents and lose my place. So Boxing Icons and Legends says, respect to Boxing Squared. Thank you for that. S. Tabby says, Fury is tough as nails, but that won't stop me flirting with his wife. Well, you better watch out. He might pull some of Deontay Wilder's 6-inch nails out and get you with them. Chris says, Callum, absolute nonsense, mate. Of the excuses I think you're talking about. Napoli 8-8 Hulls. No one wants to watch a third fight. And that is going to be something that is an issue they will have to grapple with, because obviously Deontay Wilder's indicated, and Shelley Finkel has as well, they're triggering it. So we're going to get it, but what sort of appetite is there going to be? Some people who might have paid for the second fight might be interested in watching a third fight, but they might be interested in watching it for free via an illegal stream. So I just, having seen the fight and read the sort of room as it were in terms of boxing, Twitter, also boxing YouTube, there does seem to be a bit of a malaise among fans about not really wanting to see a third fight. But I guess with some of what's happened and some of the excuses this week, it almost is like a pre-build-up type period where he's got the excuses in. And yeah, but the other thing with that, and I did mention this in a video this week, Tyson Fury, for this trilogy fight, he now has so much material to work with, it's actually insane. And I was saying in one, I can't even, there were so many videos I've done this week, but imagine if he came out on a ring walk wearing a costume similar to Deontay Wilder's. That would be the ultimate troll move. I could see him doing that. He's going to turn up at a press conference in, a similar sort of outfit. He will probably track down the maker of Deontay Wilder's outfit to actually make him a similar suit and do something like that. Could totally see it. So Soul says, I hope, honestly, can't stand racism, that Deontay Wilder. We don't need it. Heavy D says, British humour at its finest. Coach Qatar, Wilder is a hype job. Callum says, Chris Riddell, that's the beauty of the joke. Some people think I'm serious. Okay, I missed which one that was. LMK2, he rubbed it in on AJ and is a sore loser. Needs every ounce of what he is getting, in my opinion. Certainly the statement from Wilder in June, that his career was full of lies and with contradictions and gifts and that, has not aged well. And his statements and the way that he's handled himself after the loss, saying full credit to Tyson Fury, but here's excuse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. It doesn't look good for him. It actually is the definition of a sore loser, and that's the way it's portraying at the moment. But I guess that's the way he's trying to, deal with the loss. And I'm sure that his ego, because it has become so big over time, it's hard for him to stomach. So Bronze Dosser says, hit the like button, or are you pajamas too heavy? Yes, do hit the like button. That would be much appreciated. So wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, noon or night, welcome along to the Friday night New Zealand time Boxing Squared live stream. 54 in the building. Thank you for joining me here. Keller Sowland says Fury was robbed. Probably robbed of some credit this week. So, I mean, let's face it, if there was none of these excuses, there would have been maybe a couple more days where Fury got, there would have been more content. I don't want to say milked, but generally in the afterglow of a big win, there's a number of videos that end up getting done, and angles, story angles, that sort of stuff that get covered, because people want to make the most of it and cover every angle. But news, if it bleeds, it leads. And some of the stuff from Deontay Wilder this week has just eclipsed news value-wise some of the angles that may have got covered. So Johnny says, pride is dented like the side of his head. LMK2 says, Ruiz versus Ortiz, a potential step back for Ruiz or a good fight to keep the ball rolling. I will get to that topic in a moment, because if you haven't caught my latest video, Andy Ruiz Jr. is saying that he needs a tune-up before going to Luis Ortiz into that sort of fight. So I'll come to that. I'm just trying to keep on top of the chat for now, so I'll just go down here. So JD's is a clown, says Heavy D. Well, I don't think he covered himself in glory throwing Mark Breland under the bus to media in the post-fight press conference. That, yeah, I did think that didn't show a lot of class there, but obviously he was trying to stay in with Deontay Wilder, respect his wishes, and he told Breland don't do it, but he did. I don't have a problem with the stoppage. I know some people are saying, he should have respected Deontay Wilder's wishes. But what if he'd ended up, brain dead or something like that, or worse? So Croesus says, I kind of expected that Wilder will get stopped by Fury, but Jesus, Fury totally dominated him. Like, where does Wilder go from here? I think that's like a lot of people. I'll just take a sip of water just for a sec. Yeah, I mean, heading into it, there was a lot of people going for Wilder, a lot of people going for Tyson Fury. I myself said, I think this is a really close fight. It's hard to call, but because of the knockdowns in the first fight, I was just edging it to Wilder. There wasn't any confidence in that pick. It was just it was a pick and fight. But the fact that Fury went in there and dominated him like he did, yeah, it kind of come out of nowhere for most fans. And I think this is why the reaction to the fight has been so global, and it has gone global headlines. Yeah, Fury has become quite the big star. So Saint Beelzebub says, well, get your knickers off. We can play a game of knick-knack, paddywhack, and I'll give you the bone. Right, I should have screened that comment first. JPK World says, I know you're a heavyweight channel, but who do you think wins between Errol Spence Jr. or Terence Crawford? I guess there's a caveat with that, because I need to see what Errol Spence looks like in his next fight, given he had that car crash, and while this seems to be no lasting damage, I mean, who knows? What if he goes into his next fight and looks really rusty, or there is some sort of knockover effect, be it psychological, I don't know, or physical. I need to see him actually have a couple of fights. But I mean, I guess the question is, are they going to make that happen? Are we going to be made to wait for another 2, 3, 4 years or whatever? 7+1 says, apart from the third fight, I can't see Wilder fighting top opposition. So Saint Beelzebub says, wrong chat, not sure what he's on about. Callum says, Wilder should have bobbed and weaved, tire the much heavier man out. Yeah, I mean, have we ever seen Deontay Wilder do a lot of that? Generally, a lot of his defense is sort of just leaning back, getting out of the way. He sort of backs up in a straight line or circles off, and just sort of, his athleticism has been one of his best weapons for defense. But Tyson Fury did something we haven't really seen a lot of fighters do when they fought Deontay Wilder. Well, one, he's got a lot of skill. He comes forward, he's got head movements. There was, head feints, foot feints, and he was really putting the pressure on Wilder. We haven't seen a lot of people doing that. And I've always wondered as well, when someone went to Deontay Wilder's body, what would happen? But it's hard to say from that fight about the body stuff in particular, because there was a body shot knockdown, but how much was that? He was already done by the point that that came. You know what I mean? That third round knockdown seemed to take the stuffing completely out of Wilder, and from that point onwards it looked like it was only a matter of time. Probably went on a couple of rounds too long. So AZ says, hello Boxing Squared, hello to you too. Johnny says, Wilder should have been working on these things years ago when he was struggling with the areolas of the heavyweight division. What does make you wonder, I mean, I know people say that he's gotten sort of complacent with the right hand, but it does make you wonder why the skills have only ever topped out at a certain point. I mean, is that because of his trainers, or is that because he didn't think he needed to get better? he has topped out because he couldn't just, maybe coordination-wise, some of the moves with, he's a big, tall, gangly guy. Maybe some of these things were just, too hard to master. I don't have that answer. But some of these things, obviously, if he was 6'7" and more like Tyson Fury in the way that, his skills and movement, footwork, all that sort of stuff, just imagine how unbeatable he could potentially be with that knockout punch. But yeah, who knows why he hasn't got to the point where he's nothing more than a right hand. And it's probably unfair to say he's just a right hand, but that's the way he is perceived right now, and for a decent chunk of his career. But I do think his height, his speed, and his athleticism have been underrated in the past. So John says, Boxing Squared, I have discussed with Big Boys Boxing on Raphael Combat Radio, how to beat Deontay Wilder interview with Stacey McKinley in 2018. To beat Wilder, you have to step to the power. Well, we've seen that, and obviously there's a blueprint now. So LMK2 says, did you see the clip of the analyst who said Fury lowered his fist with his glove, so his knuckles were in the wrist section, therefore hitting Wilder with his knuckles? I think there's a lot of people saying a lot of things right now, and Tyson Fury won that fight. He dominated Deontay Wilder, and it wasn't one punch, it was a beatdown. And I think if people are trying to discredit Fury's win, what is that saying about their state of mind about that loss and how they're coping with it? So what did I think about Charles Martin? I walked this earth like a god. KO over Fury, Wilder 2 undercard. That was Gerald Washington. Yeah, I'll get into a couple of topics. I'm starting to fall behind in the chat a little bit, but yeah, that was my next topic. Obviously, that fight, what was it, 6 rounds? Gerald Washington stopped after taking a straight left by Charles Martin. It was an interesting fight in the fact that Gerald Washington seemingly was outworking Martin, but then Martin would have these spots of success where it was sort of, he was getting the highlight type shots in that were sort of, hurting Gerald Washington, basically every round. And I had that fight for the first few rounds quite close, but then Martin started to get into a decent rhythm. But the thing that just hurts Gerald Washington so much is he doesn't move his head. And we saw it again. And Martin was zeroing in round after round, having some success, and ultimately he found the money punch. I think Martin, he's pinning his hopes on the IBF now. He won. That was an IBF eliminator. It was an okay performance, but it's not like he set the world on fire. And I don't think anyone after that thought, well, he's bound for a title and he's going to, dominate the division. It sort of wasn't that type of performance. But, he does have good power, and he could be, I think he's top 20-ish, somewhere in the top 20, towards the back end, or maybe 21, 22, something like that. He needs to do a little bit more because when you consider that he lost to Anthony Joshua, then he lost to Adam Kovnatsky, this Gerald Washington win is actually his biggest win in a number of years. There hasn't been too many guys that he's really fought of any note since he won the title. So it was a good win in the context of his career. He needed it. Gerald Washington, I don't know where he goes. I've seen him posting on social media that he just keeps going on and he'll be rebuilding, etc. Words to that effect. But at, 37 years old now, I just don't see where he's going to go. Obviously, he's a professional boxer, he's a prize fighter, he wants some monies, but in terms of the fights, probably the lower end of the... he might end up having... I don't know. Chris Areola, Gerald Washington, I could see that happening. That might be a fun fight. AZ said, Wilder has been pathetic, really. His fans can't take the humiliation. Yeah, it was always going to happen. You could see it from a mile away. Whichever fighter lost, the opposing fan base was always going to be like rabid dogs towards the other one, just because of some of the statements and the build up and how the fans tend to act towards other fans who are chatting all sorts of stuff about their fighter. So it would have been the same way had it been Fury who lost. The Deontay Wilder fans would have been gloating this week, and there probably might have been some excuse made by the opposing fans. That just how it is, human nature. So Nelia Toko says Martin should fight Parker. I don't mind that fight, actually. But at the moment, with Parker on a Matchroom deal, Martin at PBC, and there's really nothing on the line for either of them, I can't see it getting made, but I don't mind it. So Wycliffe says, what sort of challenge do you think Shaundell is going to give JP? That's actually my next topic, so that's a good segue. So this weekend in the heavyweight division, not a whole lot doing really. So you've got Joseph Parker in Frisco, Texas on this Garcia and Vargas card. It's interesting because most people haven't really seen a lot of Shaundell Winters. Former cruiserweight, had a few fights towards the end of last year, got a couple of upsets. One was against Alexander Teslenko, and then the other against Sergey Waweko. That was in Poland. But he's been largely out of sight, out of mind, off TV for a lot of people. So they hear the name and they go, who? Is he? What's he going to do? How good is this guy? He's 39. This feels like it's another tune-up with, and it's not going to be of any note or value to Joseph Parker. But it's one of these things, and I did a video on this, it was just yesterday. He's damned if he does and if he damned if he don't, in terms of if he knocks out Shaundell Winters early or even mid-rounds or whatever, people will say, well, you did what you should be doing against a guy that, really was unheralded. But if he goes more rounds than people expect, the knives will be out and people will be into him. I think Parker, either way, if he gets a stoppage or if it goes rounds, it's a fight. He needs some rounds. He's been out of the ring for 8 or 9 months. It kind of is what it is. I mean, a third tune-up in a row. I don't want to keep seeing these fights, but yeah, he will be better for rounds if it does go rounds. And Winters is a pretty durable guy. He's saying the right things, but I think Parker is going to go in there, outclass him. The speed will be a problem for Winters. Parker will be off circling and, flicking out jabs and coming in with some... I think we might see patches where he looks to explode, but he'll have to be wary of Winters' power, especially in those early rounds, because he caught up with Teslenko a couple of times and that really sort of the rot set in. But obviously Parker a much better chin. Teslenko also was unproven. So for Winters, it's a massive step-up fight. For Joseph Parker, it's kind of, for most fans, you're like, hopefully he looks good in there, but if he does struggle to any degree, the knives will be out. But hopefully, with the third fight of his Matchroom deal, third and last fight of his Matchroom deal, he gets a big fight, because it's more than 18 months now since he's been in a proper tough fight, which was the Dillian Whyte loss. He's had the Flores tune-up, which is a confidence builder. Then he had Leopai, which was his first fight with Matchroom. He'd only just signed, got the Leopai fight, and now Winters. But people forget that he did get the Chisora fight, but he pulled up through the spider bite. So Nelia Torko says Shaundell gets knocked out in 2 rounds. Well, if that happens, that's good for Parker in terms of confidence, and I'm sure Kevin Barry will be saying we've been working on power, best camp ever. John says, I've also argued that his power is overrated. Fury took his shots and walked through them in this fight and got up from them in the first fight. I think we've seen throughout heavyweight history, even tough punches, really big punches, they don't all get knockouts. Some people can just handle the power, or the fight just plays out a certain way. So, the whole biggest puncher in history, it's very hard to compare over generations. You hear the names of the big punchers, and often Ernie Shaver's name comes up as well. But it's not like he won every fight, and it's not like he knocked everyone out either. So D Hodges says, what's up, Boxing Squared? Chat, LDBC, salute. Nalia Toko says, Shaundell, if a smart man, should get someone to put a bet on himself and just drop in the second or third round. Oh, come on, enough of that. I do like the confidence of Winters, but he really is overmatched here. I have had a few people coming to the channel saying that he's going to surprise people. I've seen those fights, the ones that he won, the upset, so I'm expecting him to be game, give it his all, and he might take Parker a few rounds. He might manage to take Parker to a decision. I wouldn't be shocked at all if it went to a decision. But if he gets a knockout, Joseph Parker, well, it is what it is. He was expected to beat this guy, and this is where he's in that unwinnable position. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Johnny says, the ironic thing is Deontay is one that should be training at a gym like Kronk. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he makes any changes. I can't see him leaving JD's. They've been there since the beginning. Wilder seems like a really loyal guy, and that, if you've got his back, he'll have yours. This is why he's so hurt by this Mark Breland stuff. Callum says, who do you think is currently good enough to beat the big man Fury? Well, you know what they say, styles make fights. So, just because Fury put on that performance against Deontay Wilder doesn't mean that exact same performance is going to work against other fighters. But, after the weekend, it's hard to bet against Fury. I've doubted him before. I think so many have. But, he really put on a very good performance. Lombard says Wilder will pull out of the third fight. Well, if he does, then that sort of frees Tyson Fury out for a big fight, potentially with an Anthony Joshua for Undisputed. I don't know, we'll see. John says Wilder has been protected from punches his whole career. To some extent, there is an element of truth in that. Some of the guys that he fought between 2015 and 2017, in that sort of 3-year span, they weren't big punches. Although Gerald Washington, I always remember a quote from Amir Mansour. This was in an interview that he did with Kiwi Box a few years back. He said how powerful Gerald Washington was and he didn't know his own strength. And if he only believed in himself. And going back to Washington, I guess that's sort of one of the reasons I picked against him was the self-belief. It just sort of seems to, in fights, fade away and wilt a bit when things get a little tough. When Martin started to have success, it was almost like Washington. You could see it that after about round 4 or round 5, that it was going to start to go downhill for him. AZ says Wilder was kicking Joshua when he was down. He deserves the worst. It's karma. Callis Alwyn says Deontay Wilder's suit. Chris Riddell talking to someone else there. Johnny says, Wilder KO'd one top 10 heavyweight and we don't even really know how good Ortiz is until he fights some other top 10ers. Guys like Foreman put many elite fighters. Callis says at least he have an excuse. Napoli says, leave a like, yes please. So I'll get to my next topic, which I'll just bring up my Microsoft Word. So we've talked about Parker's, we talked about Charles Martin's win. Manuel Charr and Trevor Bryan. This was interesting. Obviously this came out about the time of the Wilder Fury fight, definitely after the last live stream. So ESPN had something, then it was up on their website, and they've only tweeted it out on social media in the past day. I'm glad to see that the WBA has worked out this whole social media thing. But maybe we will get Don King's epic quest for peace, and that there's going to be a rationalization of that situation. They have 4 champions: Anthony Joshua, Manuel Charr, Trevor Bryan, and of course Joe Joyce, the gold champion. So Trevor Bryan, and you may have seen in a video this week, I played, and that was one of the Tyson Fury aftermath videos where he called out Tyson Fury, putting the heavyweight division on notice more broadly as well. And I guess for a lot of people, if you caught that, and if you didn't, it's up on my Twitter as well, boxing_squared. I think that might have been for a lot of people the first time they've heard Trevor Bryan talk. Doesn't really do a lot of videos on his account. It's mostly sort of pictures and a lot of Instagram story. But yeah, I think for Trevor Bryan sort of emerging from the shadows, and now he's going to be having a purse bid with Manuel Charr. So we'll see if they actually have that epic quest for peace. I was about to say epic pest for something. I don't know. But I think Trevor Bryan ices Manuel Charr. If you followed the channel for any length of time, I haven't got a lot of time for Charr. He's looking for a cash out, and I don't even believe at his prime he was really that good. I know that sounds harsh, but kind of is what it is. So XLT says, we've all seen and heard enough from Wilder to know he's no rival for the top 7. Tim says, what up, Boxing Squared? It's been a busy week with all this aftermath coverage and what's been going on and just general boxing news. So looking to have a bit of a quieter weekend. We'll see what Joseph Parker does on the weekend. There's a little bit of other boxing on too, but it's overall, apart from that Matchroom card, not a lot on. In terms of boxing this weekend. 93 in the chat, so thank you for joining me here Friday night New Zealand time. If wherever you are in the world, morning, noon or night, welcome, and thank you one and all for joining the Boxing Squared live stream. Where did I get to? So Richard says, as you've already exposed, Wilder admitted publicly that he trained in a 45 pound weighted vest. He's a hypocrite with a poor memory. Well, he's openly been torpedoing himself on the PR front. Would have been better off saying nothing and, seething internally and looking to turn things around. But some of these things, like the vest, his get-up that he wore to the ring and is relied on as a reason for the loss, it just doesn't sound credible to me. And if you're relying on that as well, and it sounds like a complete joke. And obviously a lot of interviews he's talked about it. He's been, seen training in vest, but he can't, wear one for 10 minutes or so before, a fight, of which he said he could in one of the clips that I did post. Dave says, it couldn't be less interested in the third fight. Bring on AJ. Fury will crush him as well. Well, if Wilder doesn't end up taking the third fight, it's a possibility, but they're talking about this, and I know Frank Warren sort of said it'd be great to have it by the end of 2020, but I still look at this other mandatory that Joshua's got and think, well, when's that going to happen? Are they just going to continually pay Alexander Usyk to continue to step aside? Which, for his purposes, if he does get paid millions of dollars for 2 or 3 fights to step aside, actually it's not a bad way to, boost your bank balance. Tim says, it was a great stoppage. Wilder got beat up and he's been suspended for 6 weeks. Yeah, that's pretty standard, as Unger is just saying. And Arise has just done a super chat. Much appreciated for that. Arise 1993, thank you very much. 7+1, Crawford beats Spence. I really like that fight if they can get it done, but these politics, I guess this was a bit of a dry run. Could they do that fight? But there's a part of me that thinks that Crawford-Spence is more of a fight for, boxing fans rather than, casuals. I don't know what sort of casual interest they could get. I'm not sure if it would be as much as Wilder Fury. I definitely think it does less than 800,000 buys. Wilder reminds me of that Pepperami from the advert. Okay, not sure what that advert is. LMK2 says, because of the incubation period is between 2 and 4 weeks, don't be surprised if you see next week or so that Wilder will excuse his performance on COVID-19, coronavirus, Wu flu, bat flu. You get my drift. I hope not. I'm glad that the excuses have stopped, because over the period of 36 hours they were just raining down and it wasn't a good look. It's I think, as one of my moderators here in the chat, Unger, said, it was an unmitigated PR disaster, and I completely agree with that. Wow, I've really fallen behind the chat here, so apologies. I'm just catching up. Okay, I've got back to my place. So if you're leaving a comment now, it's probably going to be about 20 minutes till I get to it, so apologies in advance. So 100 in the building at the moment. Thank you for joining, one and all. John says, the trainer needs to tell the fighter what to do. No fighter can tell a trainer not to throw in the towel. Wilder showed more than enough heart against Fury. Breland was right to throw in the towel. I agree with that. It was a good stoppage, and what if Wilder had... I know he says, even though he is willing to kill a man in the ring, and he expects the same, that's the fighter, the bravado coming out. That's Deontay Wilder trying to put across the public image, and maybe he's bought into that and believes that so much, but Breland had his best interest at heart, and at that point it didn't look like he was coming back. I thought he was done. It probably went on too long as it was. He had a decent period to actually respond, and a few rounds extra. From about the 5th it looked like it was pretty much over. In my opinion, do you think Parker will become a champ again? He has the skills, just needs to be more aggressive, maybe ditch Barry. Well, he's not going to ditch Barry, so that's from Arise 1993. The whole trainer thing, Parker is... I think he's going to stick things out with Barry until the end of his career, or at least very close to it. I don't see them parting ways. It's they've just got such a bond. He's like a number of fighters in the heavyweight division that, depending on opportunity, he could land another title shot, or maybe even 2 title shots, depends how long he sticks around for. And circumstances within the division, like the first time that he became champion with a WBO belt becoming vacant and him fighting Andy Ruiz Jr., I mean, maybe it needs to be another one of those situations, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things pan out in the WBO in this next year. Obviously, they're pinning their hopes to that number 2 position, but he probably needs to have a couple of, or at least one fight in 2020 against a good name to get people believing in him again, because there's a perception problem for him. A lot of people think that he's not really in the hunt right now. Leon says, excuses are nothing new. Their fans always use something. Fury was robbed. Joshua had a panic attack. Now Wilder's suit. Yeah, I mean, exactly what I was saying. It's just part of the sport too, but sometimes it can be a bit unseemly. XLT says, Wilder has footwork like a mummy and awful balance, and he can be knocked down every round. I mean, it's easy to say that, but he hasn't been knocked down every round by anyone he's faced. I mean, he'd obviously been knocked down the one time, was it way back when, 10th fight, something like that, by, what was it, Harold Scognes. Unger says, Wilder is a one-trick pony, but it's a hell of a trick. And that's, always going to be his escape mechanism for a lot of his fights. He's, openly been giving up rounds in some fights, like against Gerald Washington, like against Luis Ortiz in the second fight, and he still managed to get the job done. But if you take that trick away, obviously he can look a bit decidedly average. He can be outboxed, and I don't think he enjoyed the pressure that Fury put him under. And by about round 2, he looked pretty gas and looked like the fight was catching up with him. How do you think White vs. Fury would go? I think he would have knocked Wilder out earlier than 6. He's been talking about his game plan to beat Wilder for ages, and it was the same game plan Fury used. White vs. Fury is interesting because I always remember those sparring rumours that came out a year or so ago, where White said that he dropped Fury 5 times in sparring, and Fury never denied it. So it made me think, actually, there's something to that. So it could be a highly competitive fight. Robert says, look, everything went Fury's way and the rematch will be different, brought into the hardest puncher of time. Ryu says, Fury was robbed, was not an excuse, straight facts. Is that for the first fight? I'm not sure if you're referring to talking to me or someone else. JJ says, Fury vs. White would end just like Fury vs. Chisora. It's a good point. People often forget about that Chisora 2 fight. That was just one of those fights where Fury utilized his massive height advantage and the weapons that he's got in terms of the reach and the jab, and just peppered Derek Chisora, kept him out of the fight. And if someone like Ajit Kabayel can do that to Derek Chisora, styles make fights. But if White could close the distance, get some hooks away, especially to the body. He says he dropped Fury with body shots. That seems to be an avenue that would be, something you should do. Otto Warren was banging Fury to the body. He was having success, and that was before the cuts. But, styles make fights, performances make fights, game plans make fights. We saw that, completely different game plan, changed it up, told us what he was going to do, and he executed it to a T. So Wall says Fury smashes White, and Femi, he's on another level. Yeah, it's hard to bet against them after that performance against Wilder. Keller Selwyn says Jarrell Miller bummed Deontay's misses. I should have screened that one first before saying that. Apologies if you got this on loud somewhere and someone heard that. Matt says, would your prediction change now Wilder has lost? For me, Wilder still beats White and AJ easy. Yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Deontay Wilder can't have a good fight and can't beat either of those fighters. Because like I just mentioned with Fury and other fighters, styles make fights. And there's not too many guys that are 6'9" with the movement of a Tyson Fury and the skills of a Tyson Fury. There's kind of one guy that's kind of doing that, and that's Fury. Ryu says Wilder should retire. Callum says that body shot that knocked Wilder on his ass was an awesome punch. St. Beelzebub says the difference in the excuses are that they're coming from the ex-champion mainly, and not the fans. When AJ lost, he didn't make the excuses. It was the fans. This time the ex-champion is leading them. Yeah, that's a great point, and Deontay, as I said, he's torpedoing his own reputation with these excuses. I've heard a whole bunch of trainers and fighters in different interviews when they've been asked about the excuses, the costume, and they're not buying it either. JJ says Fury would fight AJ with the same strategy he used against Klitschko because AJ is a heavier and stronger than Wilder, and also a better boxer than Wilder. So, I mean, that would be a highly competitive fight. But Fury, I think, would be using his natural advantages, because why wouldn't he? Robert Thorpe says Wilder should bring in new trainers, try new ideas. You say state of mind. What's your state of mind? That wasn't Wilder, mate. He didn't throw a meaningful punch. Okay, I'm not... A few commas might have helped there. Yeah, he did throw a few meaningful punches. Was it the first or second round? He actually caught Fury with a couple of good punches. And Fury said after, even to Deontay Wilder, if you caught that top rank sort of in-ring clip which they put up on their Instagram and the in there with the mic, he says to Deontay Wilder, you caught me with a couple of good punches and, I felt them, but, well done, but yada yada, whatever. So there was a couple that he did get off that Tyson Fury was riding them, or they didn't land flush, or he got out of the way. I mean, he's just showed he had too much for Wilder on the night. So L-Dog says he still favours Wilder over Dillian Whyte. Ryo says hard to call Fury versus AJ. Ryo says Whyte would smash Wilder. Unger says Wilder has a better chance when he went full windmill, unpredictable and hard to train for. Yeah, but he doesn't go full windmill often. That was generally when he smelt a bit of blood after he sort of had someone wobbled. Lou Buck says, I think Fury beats AJ 7-5 on points. Boxing Squid says, All Things Awesome Gaming says, Boxing Squid, if Fury dominates AJ and Whyte, how much does Wilder's stock go back up? Personally, I think final form Fury is unstoppable, and Wilder was just the first of many. Well, if he continues to deliver dominant performances like that against top opposition, I mean, it could end up, having Wilder's stock go back up. But the best way for Wilder's stock to go back up is for him to put in a credible performance in the rematch, well, the trilogy fight, I should say. Because if he gets blown out again, then people will be saying, is this guy done? I mean, some people are saying that now, but if he doubles up with a dominant loss, it's not going to be good for his reputation. Wills 100 says Dillian doesn't get enough credit after his loss to AJ. He got so much better. Would hunt Wilder. I think he beats Wilder. See, the difference that I think a lot of people are looking at Deontay Wilder after that. But Dillian Whyte goes in a considerably smaller man against Deontay Wilder, and that would be a factor in that fight, I believe. The sort of game plan that he executed against Ortiz too, which he tried to carry over into the Fury fight, would probably have some better success against Dillian Whyte, where he is hanging back, because he's going to have a reach advantage of several inches and about 4 inches, 5 inches in height. I mean, they list Dillian Whyte at 6'3", but he's more like 6'2". So, some of these things would factor into it. But if he gets inside and bashes to the body and gets a left hook away, sure, it could be over. But, if he tries to come in and gets caught with the right hand, I mean, we have seen Dillian Whyte rocked in a number of fights. So, yeah, it's still an interesting fight. I want to see, all these matchups, we like to sort of, have a look into the tea leaves and sort of mull them over. I want to see them. I mean, I hope now that Deontay Wilder's lost that some of the careful matchmaking, because there was careful matchmaking during the championship reign, but more lately from 2018 he stepped up and took tougher fights. Hopefully that continues. Hopefully it's all tough fights now, and even if he gets more losses, he can still be in some big fights, some good fights, some tear-ups, and I don't think people should write him off just because of one loss. He can be in some good fights, but he still is a beatable fighter, and we've seen how he can be beaten too. But that doesn't mean that others in the division who are so much smaller in terms of their height and reach can execute the exact same sort of plan as a Tyson Fury from the first fight, or will be able to get in on Deontay Wilder up on his chest like Tyson Fury was able to do. I mean, that was a high risk strategy. but he was able to execute it. But some of that was down to all the feints, foot feints, head feints, just the general movement. And how many heavyweights are doing that like Tyson Fury right now? Not many. So JPK World says, in my opinion, this will be the heavyweight division. White beats Povetkin, Usyk beats Chisora, AJ beats Pulev, Fury beats Wilder. November, AJ beats Usyk, Fury beats White. Winner versus AJ in 2021. June 2021. In terms of a form guide, that probably is a pretty good indication of what could happen. But it's boxing. I mean, we've seen so many upsets in the past year or two that it's not funny. So the form guides can sometimes just be thrown out the window. We think we know what's going to happen, and it just turned on its head. I'll just get back to my topic list. Yeah, so Joshua and Pulev. It was interesting, different tweets from media saying that it's set to be announced shortly, that it's just the site deal to go, that's June 20th, Tottenham Stadium, just working out final details. And then you have a WBN article which quotes Bob Arum saying, look, we're going to push this to go to a purse bid because there's, we're not getting some of the things we want, British Boxing Board of Control, getting in our way, yada, 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 all that sort of stuff. So if that goes to a purse bid, could literally go anywhere. But I'm sort of more of the view that that's more of a sort of negotiating pressure type tactic, get a few concessions their way. I'm sure Eddie Hearn, with the planning that's just already gone on for a fight in June at the Tottenham Stadium, there's a lot of time, effort and money that's already been pulled into that. They don't want the rug pulled out from that. I mean, they've got a whole thing planned out, and obviously Sky would probably probably have a meltdown if it ended up going somewhere else and they weren't going to be broadcasting the fight. I'm sure they would have the fight, but they may not have the sort of access that, obviously if they're controlling the event from their end. It's interesting. Bob Arum, and Kubrat Pulev playing hardball games. L-Dog says, Luis Ortiz laid the blueprint out on how to beat Wilder, established lead hand dominance and disrupt his rangefinder. He becomes extremely hesitant to throw his right hand. Willie Boy, slip and move, Boxing Squared. Do we not usually judge our boxers by their body of work? I would have loved to roll with Wilder, but I just can't due to his below par resume. Dare, Toby, great, and also, okay, I'm not sure what that says. His resume, in terms of, I've always described that sort of period between 2015 and 2017 as like middling meat. There was no one special on there, no signature wins, but the wins were okay. But there needed to come a period where he got some names on the resume, especially if he wants to be a Hall of Famer. There's a point where you just have to pull the trigger and have those fights. And they obviously decided by 2018 that was going to happen. The Ortiz win, and then obviously the Fury draw. It fattens out his resume, decently. But now this loss, and if he can't get many other notable wins, certainly his resume overall will start to look, through the course of time, maybe weaker than some people would like. But he could well come back and still get some good wins. Really depends who they match him with. Styles make fights, and he's got that right hand. I'm not going to completely write him off from one loss, but obviously Tyson Fury was too good for him on the night, far too good. So Robert Thorpe says Boxing Squared needs to look at that fight again. Wilder was like AJ in the first fight. Rematch will be revealing. Well, I saw the fight. I've watched it again. It was a pretty dominating performance by Fury. All the excuses aside, it's a fight. Even Fury had some, in camp different injury bits and pieces. The fight went ahead. If Wilder wasn't up to it, they could have pulled the pin. If they're going on about all sorts of bits and pieces, but obviously it wasn't serious enough to do that. They were confident he could go in there and get the job done. And I agree with you in terms of the rematch could be revealing. What if Deontay Wilder turns it on its head again? Maybe he gets lucky with a punch. Maybe he makes changes to his game plan that are such that he sort of gazumps Fury like Fury gazumped him. Wilder was not expecting Fury to rush out from the opening bell and start putting it on him. He didn't expect it. And that was something, it was almost like he was caught cold and off balance and off guard by it. And he never sort of really got into the fight. So True says, morning peeps, hello to you too. Robert thought, boxing squared, Wilder will shock the world like Ali. Well, if they have to fight, it's a fight and it's a possibility. Rudy says, Joseph Parker should rematch Andy Ruiz Jr., but before that he needs another tune-up versus Kajanu. I think Kajanu is on the decline now. I mean, he's starting to get knocked out by everyone. He's facing Ifeah Jagba in a couple of weeks. A week or so now. It's March the 7th on the Kovnatsky card. I'm not going to talk about that card tonight. We'll save that for next week. So Kajanu, he's just going for paydays now. But even if he faced Kajanu and Kajanu did the same tactics, Parker may not knock him out. But it's interesting. Kajanu has kind of pulled the strategy of either sparring partner mode, where he just shells up and doesn't do much, or he goes the complete 180 and then just tries to, trade with the guys like Dubois and a few others in his career. It really is kind of, there's nothing in the middle. There's not a sort of, I'm going to be positive but defensively responsible, sort of a middling sort of type of style. It's either I'm just going to throw my hands and get knocked out, or shell out and go the distance. So Napoli says, do I think Usyk can do well in the heavyweight division? I do. I really like his talent. He's a smaller version of Tyson Fury. He'll have success against guys that are flat-footed, that just rely on one punch, and he's not going to allow them to set their feet. But facing guys that are much taller, not that he's a small heavyweight, because he's still 6'3". I think there's a fallacy that he's people almost sort of think of him like he's 5'9" or something. 6'3" is the same as Dillian Whyte is listed, so think about that. So Michael J says, hello Boxing Squared, what are your thoughts on the fact Tyson Fury wore a Nigerian mouthguard? That guy is something else. I like his self-confidence. Yeah, I mean, that was obviously some sort of signal or hat tip to Anthony Joshua, I'll see you soon type thing. I mean, I haven't actually heard him discuss that topic. I think it was maybe the day after, or that it was sort of picked up. So yeah, I mean, if anyone has any more information on that, I'd be interested in hearing that. So Georgina says, thoughts on Parker's fight coming up? Well, we just talked about that before, so I don't want to completely go over old ground, but he's in a bit of a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't sort of situation. If he knocks Winters out early or in the fight at all, people will say you did what you were meant to do. It was a tune-up, yawn. But if he goes rounds with Winters, people are going to be, the knives will be out going, why didn't you knock this guy out who you were meant to beat? So Ryo says Wilder's ego will exercise the rematch clause, but he knows deep down what's up. Yeah, I think his pride and ego will force him to do it. He will think that, this is why all the excuses have come. He can't accept that he was beaten by the better guy on the night. He says, that full credit, full praise to Tyson Fury, but in the next breath, but excuse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Scott 70 says 80 watching, 32 likes. Hit the like button. Yeah, if you can hit the like button, much appreciated. So apologies if you've left a comment recently. It's I'm about 20 minutes behind on the chat by the look of it, so I'm trying to catch up here. So Essie says he loves the channel. Thank you very much. True says windmill that like button. Yes, please. Shaundell Winters is a blown up cruiserweight. Well, he is. He was a cruiserweight. Napoli says Rocky Marciano, heaviest pound for pound boxer and undefeated, not like bum squad. Yeah, but there's also criticism of Marciano as well, his record, and that he didn't necessarily fight some of the guys that he could have. But I don't want to sort of get into hashing that sort of stuff up with Marciano's record. L-Dog says, I would rather see White fight Hrgovic. It's a good fight, but there's nothing in it for Dillian Whyte at the moment, except risk. Force goes Fabio. Good morning from Washington State. Good morning to you too. Thank you for joining the channel. The live stream, I should say. True 2022 says, has Miller got a fight? If so, who gave him a license? Well, they're talking about May, but as of earlier this week, as I understand from Bob Arum, some of his comments, they're trying to get him licensed in New York. Be interesting if New York will try to put him through a few hoops, though, because obviously last time when he popped for the PEDs, he wasn't actually licensed. His license had lapsed, so he couldn't be sanctioned by them because he wasn't under the auspices of whatever their rules and regulations are. So Fury will batter Wilder in the third fight as his ego is broken. Possibly. It'll be interesting. I almost read that Fury will batter Wilder like a piece of fish. So it's getting late here. L-Dog says, I think Tony Yoka or Bakadil Jalolov will have the best chance at beating Fury in the future. Yeah, some of those guys, how they move, they could be in some really good fights with Tyson Fury. I mean, Bakadil Jalolov, but I guess Tyson Fury, in terms of how long is he going to stick around? He's talking 3 fights, but is that just talk? I think Tony Yoka would be more likely to get a fight with Fury because, one, he's already somewhat into his pro career. Bakadil Jalolov has dropped back down to the amateurs, going for Olympic gold this year, etc. Imagine, though, if the Tokyo Games get cancelled because of coronavirus, and then Bakadil Jalolov has wasted the best part of the last year going for for a gold medal at Tokyo. Oh, you'd feel bummed out. But Tony Yoka's also with Top Rank, so if Fury stays with Top Rank, then if Yoka comes on and leaps and bounds in the next couple of years, it's a fight that's a few years away, yeah. JJ says the only boxer that can beat Fury right now is himself. I agree with that, and sometimes there's been the knock on him that he fights to the level of his opposition, I should say, and perhaps we could see that again. Maybe he will have the odd off night. We can't discount that. The Wallen night was a bit of an off night, and that could happen again. So Ryo says Parker is a class act. I hope he gets another shot, but I can't see him being a champ again whilst AJ and Fury are active. Watcher says Wilder has never been protected. None can provide evidence. Oh, come on. You've been actually coming to the channel with all sorts of nonsense this week, Watcher. Some of the comments you've been making this week that Deontay Wilder hasn't been making excuses. You need to get real. He's had one of the most carefully managed careers in heavyweight history. Until 2018, very carefully matched. The Luis Ortiz fight was the biggest risk by far until that point. I'm not having any of that. Get out of here with that stuff. Unga says, true 2022, no license yet. LMK2, I second the Wilder-Ruiz suggestion. Can only see fireworks there. A 3-way knockout series with Dillian Whyte would be a perfect storm of aggressive action. Well, hopefully we can get some of these bigger fights. People are losing their O's, and if there's money to be made, some of them could be made. So we'll see what happens. But a topic that I did want to talk about before I get back to the chat was Andy Ruiz Jr. saying that he wants to take a tune-up fight before facing Luis Ortiz, which kind of, knocked me, back a little bit, because I was thinking, what's the point? I mean, why not just take that fight? He's talking he wants a tune-up fight in August. So when would this Luis Ortiz fight actually be? At the earliest, it would seem to be December, but more likely in 2021. And can Ortiz just be sort of, sitting around waiting for Andy Ruiz? Not really. He wants paydays. He wants to be a factor in the heavyweight division. But why does he need a tune-up? And it's 6 months away as well. Couldn't he have if he's going to have a low-level tune-up just for a confidence builder, he doesn't need to be in perfect shape. Just, he could have one in a couple of months. Whip himself into some better shape, and then get into an Ortiz fight. You could have that in August. It just sort of, I don't know what Andy Ruiz Jr. is doing right now, and other comments he's made where he sort of says, look, I'm ready to face Tyson Fury if they need me to. And it's like, well, so you're not ready to face Ortiz, you need a tune-up, but you're ready for Fury next. That screams of just wanting the payday. I do feel sorry for Ortiz sometimes, because things like this, you think, he's going to get a big fight. And let's face it, outside of the Wilder fights, there hasn't been a lot of fights he's been able to secure at a level that fans want to see him in with. The last one before the first Wilder fight was Jennings in 2014, 2015? 2015, was it? So I was thinking, actually, this is a really good matchup. It's, both coming off losses, and it's in-house, it's easy to be made. Yeah, I thought that was a really good matchup. To me, it doesn't sound like it'll happen. He says, I want that fight, but I need the tune-up first. So when would the actual fight be? 2021 at the earliest by the look of it. So Leon says, I think Breland thing is an issue of trust. He's never wanted the towel thrown in, and he can't trust him not to do it again. Yeah, I understand that completely, and his reticence to, about Breland now, because there was an element, a trust thing going on between them. But Breland was looking out for his safety too. I mean, maybe with some passing of time, because this is all so fresh, Wilder will maybe thank him for that, because who knows what could have happened if he took more of a beating and things went sideways for him. But it doesn't look like Mark Breland will be around for long. Isabella says, just got up from the UK. Good morning, Boxing Squared. Another day, another insight into the heavyweight division. Thank you for joining us. Unger says, you beat Fury going to the body. Easier said than done. Yep. And that's the whole thing with different fighters too. If they want to try replicate some of what Fury did to Deontay Wilder. If you try to do the same thing and you haven't got good head movement, your skills aren't quite on point, and you could find yourself on the seat of your pants. Unrivaled boxing talk and news. Why is Chisora fighting better opponents than Parker? I think part of that, remembering that Chisora and Parker were meant to fight in October, and Parker could have had the opportunity to face him in April, turned it down, didn't want a 7-week camp. In October, he pulled out through the spider bite. But now it's just a case of he can be used for a pay-per-view against Usyk in the UK. It's a bigger money fight for Derek Chisora, and it makes sense to make that fight. He's a known quantity. He's coming off some good wins. It's a conscious decision by Eddie Hearn to put Derek Chisora in with Alexander Usyk. Parker obviously wants that fight, but if Hearn can make more money off Chisora in the UK with a pay-per-view, he'll do it. I just see it as a simple business decision. Hatman says the Fury vs Wilder 2 pay-per-view was a flop. He said they didn't break even. I don't know what they did or didn't make at this point. Remember, some of this is preliminary information. We just have the 800 plus thousand buys from the United States. We don't know what the UK pay-per-view is. We don't know what the international pay-per-view is. We do know that there was a gate of, 16, 17 million, something like that. There will be other revenue streams as well, licensing out to countries that have just played the fight free to air, merchandise, all sorts of bits and pieces. I don't know what break-even is. I heard during fight week it was 800 to 850. I've subsequent heard this week that it was maybe 1 million or 1.1. But in the context of the heavyweight division, a pay-per-view in the United States getting 800,000 plus buys was the best since, 2002, Tyson and Lewis. So in that context, I think it can be considered a success. It doubled more than its first fight. That doesn't happen very often. But financially, if it is, doesn't break even, well, they certainly tried and they poured it into it. And maybe they're secretly disappointed with the overall number. I don't know. We'll have to see. But in terms of the number itself, I think the number's good. If it didn't make enough money, well, maybe they paid Wilder and Fury too much. Remember, what was it, $30 million, $25-30 million? It's a big check. Watcher says Wilder was number 1 in BoxRec, fought number 4 in Ortiz in the Ring Magazine twice, beat Stavern, beat all guys in the WBC top 10. Well, he wasn't number 1 on BoxRec before this fight. I think, if you go back to... It's going back a bit, I think. But remembering he's beating the guys in the WBC, that's not necessarily the best of the heavyweight division. It's like you look at some of these sanctioning bodies. But, I understand why you're doing that, Watcher. You're a massive Deontay Wilder fan and you want to make some, big him up and make him look great. I understand why you're doing that. But other people in the chat are probably going to disagree with you to some extent. I don't think Deontay Wilder's a bad fighter. He's got, a big punch, one of the biggest punches in heavyweight history, but he has been protected to some extent in his career. He's had a very well-matched career up until 2018. No one's going to convince me different. EJ Boxing Live says morning. So apologies if you've joined the chat and I'm well behind here. I'm trying to catch up here. I'll actually get to another topic. So we've covered off most on my list. Usyk versus Chisora. We were talking about Usyk just a moment ago. Likely for May 23rd, according to Eddie Hearn. I know that there is a lot of people sort of on the Derek Chisora hype train at the moment on the back of wins against a pretty rinsed Artis Spilka and also David Price. But yeah, I'm not picking him to beat Alexander Usyk. I mean, remembering Usyk is going to be the taller guy in there. I think a lot of people forget that Derek Chisora is like 6'1". Alexander Usyk is going to have the height on him, and I think this is a good test for him. Don't get me wrong, Derek Chisora is not going to be some sort of pushover, but I think, if people watched the fight between Ajit Caballero and Derek Chisora a couple of years ago and saw that, I mean, Usyk will do a better job than Caballero did on Derek Chisora. He's just overall a bit slicker than Caballero. And I know some people like to say, oh, well, he's motivated now. But, I think it's a bad style matchup for Derek Chisora. So Unga says, Trevor Bryan destroys chart, not even close. True said, I'm watching from hospital, wouldn't miss the weekly live stream. Well, I hope you're okay there, True. Get well soon. Orbital Sap says, epic pest for Queese. Yeah, that kind of came out wrong. Scott says, true dedication, get well soon. Yes, yeah, true, get well. Jason says, boxing, come down. Okay, I'm not sure what that's about. So Will says, New Zealand is all ahead of us time-wise. Yes, we are. All Things Awesome Gaming, Boxing Squared. I can't see anyone beating Tyson Fury. The reach, offense, defensive skills, reflexes, IQ, chin, heart. He's ticking a lot of boxes, and some of the performances he's been putting up against Wilder, obviously more recently, has been pretty good. But, I mean, you're only as good as your last fight, and obviously, against Otto Warren just a number of months ago, didn't look necessarily that flash, did he? Okay, I've fallen woefully behind in the chat. I've actually lost my place completely, so just bear with me a second. I think I'm about 300 comments behind, so apologies for that. So Arias says Daniel Dubois will be the next big thing. Will says Ronda Rousey was a one-trick pony. Once she finally was figured out, everyone best her. Yeah, but she had a successful career too. Willie Boy, slip and move. Unger, was Tony Bellew not a mandatory for Stevenson? Just asking. Will says Dubois has a suspect chin. Well, we're going to find out, I guess. This Joe Joyce fight, a lot of people are writing Joyce off, but, he's going to be a stern test. He's not just going to be a knockover job like Fujimoto or Tete or Richard Lartey or anything like that. It's probably going some rounds. If Daniel Dubois can dominate Joe Joyce, who's already had a good, win over a guy like Bryant Jennings, then he really is going places. I mean, we know, he's got talent, and we think he's going to be the next big thing, but this is the sort of moment to sort of prove that he's really stepping into that contender level. Because the win over Gorman, very good win, best win of 2019 for Dubois, but we didn't know how good Gorman was and Dubois at that point, and I don't know if we still know how good Nathan Gorman is. But I think this win against Joe Joyce, we just got to... But I like it. If Dubois can beat Joyce, it's a massive statement. So Sammy says the new excuse is that Fury was hitting Wilder with the side of the glove and that Fury cheated. Gigi Allen says Daniel is getting a bit overconfident. I think he's talking like he's going to run through Joe Joyce. I think Joyce could beat him. Yeah, I think that it's going to be a very tough fight. It's not like a 80-20 fight. I think it's more like a 55-45, something like that. Master Blaster says there was video evidence of White knocking Fury down pretty bad. I haven't seen that, but obviously he said that he dropped him something like 5 times in a sparring session. So Cash for Cat says, hi Boxing Squared, hello to you too. Liberalism is a cult. Fury Chisora 2 is what will happen to White. Arise 1993, Dubois needs to be tested. He's power, just needs to see him under a bit of pressure. I do think he beats Joyce comfortably though. But all the things you want to see, he's going to get in this fight. So Cash for Cat says, Boxing Squared, I told you again, the Gypsy King wins again, and he did. Lou Buck says, I can see Tony Yoka stepping up this year as he already has the amateur pedigree. Well, he's spoken about a fight that he's going to have in New York on March 14th. Nothing confirmed, no opponent, no official announcement, but he's already saying on social media for a number of days, March 14th. So Vizio says White is not an easy fight for Fury because White will pressure him and attack the body. Also, Fury is open to a left hook. So Sammy says, I also still think Wilder beats AJ. Willie Boy says, D. Hodges, shame Wilder doesn't share your confidence. Angus says, great move by Yoka going to the States. Yeah, I think he'd outgrown France, and he had sort of that notion of, you know, I want to bring a heavyweight title to France, etc., and fight here, and yada, yada, yada. But how much of that was influenced by his TV deal that he had in France with Canal? Jack Sparrow says, say hello, Toe. Hello, Toe. Lubak says, Usyk could box circles around Wilder. That'd be an interesting fight. I still want to see that, even though Wilder and other heavyweights like Dillian White have sort of ridiculed, and Jarrell Miller ridiculed Usyk. He gives them pretty interesting fights because that movement and what he does, even though he's not considered a massive puncher, he wears you down. So L-Dog says he's not very high on Makhmedov. I think he can be easily outboxed and countered. I've heard a lot of rumours from reliable sources on his chin as well. Yeah, it's Makhmedov. Yeah, he's an interesting case, fighting up in Canada. Big puncher, big uppercut, big right hand. Seemingly a bit limited with other punches that he throws, and he is a bit open and he can be caught. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how he goes because he's going to be in a lot of fun fights. True says, can't keep up with the chat, will watch later, my brain hurts. Yeah, the chat is really going pretty quickly. So what I might do in a moment is try to scroll down and try to re-catch up with it. So we've already been going for over an hour 17, 119 in the building. Thank you for joining the Boxing Squared weekly live stream, Friday night in New Zealand, wherever you are, morning, noon or night. Thank you for joining me. So Jack is in the chat here, begging to be said hello to you, Jack Sparrow. So Unga says, I like Makhmedov, hunted down Rice and took out a very good beard easily. Jason says, Fury just absorbed Wilder's shot like the Borg. St. Beelzebub says, what I've been saying for a while, he's 20 minutes behind, you'll have to wait. And you did wait. So LMK2 says, Usyk troubles everyone, but Fury Joshua beats Fury and Wilder. I agree with Usyk's statement, but the latter I'm not so sure. Vizio says, if Fury has 5 more fights, he will lose. No fighter is unbeatable. Yeah, I mean, people, obviously, rightly so after that performance, very high on Fury right now. But he's not, there's no unbeatable fighters. I mean, if he manages to go through the rest of his career unbeaten, I mean, it's quite the feat. But obviously, a little bit of controversy earlier in his career that he was maybe gifted a decision. So sometimes fighters have off nights, and maybe we can chalk this one up for Deontay Wilder as an off night, but it's clear he needs to go back to the drawing board as well. Liberalism is a cult. Is White really 6'4"? I wouldn't think so. I think he's 6'2". Dr. Dredd says AJ fights better against tall guys. Jason Landers says in round 1, matey. Not sure what that's about. L-Dog says, I think Makhmedov is very dangerous, but I don't rate his boxing ability. Guys who can remain calm under pressure and set their shots up well will defeat Makhmedov, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, and he was outboxed in the amateurs a number of times, but also, kind of like Wilder, Makhmedov was able to, with the one-hitter quitter, knock some guys out that probably he should have lost to because he lost so many rounds. Watcher says there was no careful matchmaking for Deontay Wilder. Well, you can live in a dream world. Clearly had very careful matchmaking through a decent chunk of his career. There's a lot of back and forth in the chat here. So Stella says, hello one and all, thank you for joining us. Vizio says, AJ will knock out Pulev because he's there to be hit. Pulev's an interesting case. I mean, I think some people are just writing him off completely, but he's been targeting this fight for 3 years. There'll be no stone unturned. He's a guy who plays the percentages, and he's probably going to try frustrate Joshua as well. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm not going to say too much now because obviously I want to put some videos out and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think Pulev may come better than advertised than some people think. As the Bronze Plumber says, Pulev is no walkover for sure, but it's not quick, so I don't think he has anything new for AJ. Cash for Cat, interesting to see how big Baby performs without half the pharmacy in a system. That will be interesting, and there's been some videos on social media. Some people have commented he looks a little slimmer, but Bob Arum has actually said of Miller they've hired a nutritionist. Jason says 3-1 for Joyce seems a big price. Fury won clearly, but they got a video about the glove. How do you mean? What, loaded gloves or no padding? I mean, I think some people are quick to sort of, as a response to Wilder getting beaten, trying to, make an excuse. Oh, well, this must have been a reason. I mean, the gloves were inspected by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, as were the wraps. They've got people there in the room while it's all happening, supervising. So it's not just easy to, try to put concrete in your gloves or anything like that. Have a drink, just a second. Lubak77 says Pulev looked slow and ponderous in his last fight, and at 38 years of age is on the slide. I've been thinking about his 2019. I wondered, because he can throw body shots, but he really didn't want to in his last fight. He knew he could win with what he was doing. He only gave what he needed to. And I wondered if he was actually holding off, trying to look, a certain way. I don't know. So Mika says Parker versus Wilder, very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of fights that, a lot of the, top 15, top 20 heavyweights could be in, that we'd love to see. I just hope we get some in the next couple of years. There does seem to be a period where people have come back to heavyweight boxing. It's been on a bit of a rise in recent years. Hopefully, it's not just talk about big fights and we only get one or two of them. Hopefully we can get a real good, slew of good fights in the next couple of years. Ortiz vs Wilder 3 on pay-per-view. Again, no thank you. BOP Boxing Observer podcast. Hey, Manuel Cha is looking for a payday. Wilder could step in and get that prestigious regular title. Yeah, I think Trevor Bryan is going to retire Manuel Cha. Yeah, it'll be I think if they can broadcast that fight, if they have a TV deal for that Manuel Cha and Bryan fight, it's going to be a lot of interested onlookers, because Cha's been out of the ring for a few years and no one really knows how good Trevor Bryan is, because he was off TV in obscurity and had that title put on the line when no one asked for it to be on the line. So I'm interested to see it. I mean, I had, ages ago when, he won the title, the 3 guys that he'd fought before had a collective 70 odd losses. So it's hard to get a beat on how good he is if he's just beating up on, low level journeymen. So Vizio says, we don't need the trilogy, it's a waste of time. Well, if they think they can make money, and clearly they must do if it's going to go ahead. I mean, because if they really didn't want it to go ahead, I mean, Wilder wouldn't come out so quickly and say it's going to go ahead. I mean, they must feel they're going to, get everyone paid and that sort of, I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it will do as well as this rematch, because they really poured everything into it, and from what we're hearing, maybe it wasn't as big a success as they wanted it to be, but still 800,000 buys in the US is good going. So UK Ghost says he was talking reckless before, now he's making excuses after being battered from pillar to post. And that's, what at the top of the stream I did talk about. I'm not slamming Deontay Wilder the fighter, because he fought well in terms of showing a lot of heart and determination. Ultimately he came up short, but Deontay Wilder, with all the excuses, trash away on all that stuff, because it's not a good look for him. Vizio says Wilder cannot change because he's too old and too in love with his right hand. Well, you might be right, but maybe he can pull something out. Maybe, who knows? But, you can never write anyone off, especially if they've got power, because it's a fight after all. And we saw in the first fight, Fury made some mistakes, and he did get clipped. It's not to say that he'll make mistakes, but if he does present an opportunity, Wilder will certainly look to exploit it. JD says the PBC is worth less value without a heavyweight champion. Who's going to buy it now? I don't necessarily agree. I mean, they've got a pretty big stable and TV deals. TV deal equals guaranteed money. So Sean says if Wilder is going to get rid of Breland and make him the fall guy for the loss, who should he bring in as a replacement coach that could change his style? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, because what is the setup going to be? Is JD's going to take a bigger role? Because he sort of explained they have a different setup to a lot of other sort of fighters. He described it in the post-fight as more like a football sort of setup with, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, all that sort of stuff. But I've heard a lot of criticism. I mean, Ronnie Shields was going in, Kevin Cunningham was going in, talking about, they didn't have a proper, cut man. They didn't have no one using an end swell. There was all sorts of stuff. They weren't splashing some water on Wilder, and there was a lot of criticism of the corner and the work that they were doing between rounds. Not necessarily throwing in the towel and anything like that, but the sort of in-between rounds leading up to it, and that there was no real advice beyond, throw the right hand D. Lubuck says Wilder's new fanboy shout will be costume squad. So liberalism as a cult says, I heard it's a done deal, Breland was fired. Well, from what the public statement suggests is Wilder's going to mull on this while he's on holiday. So he's going away for the best part of a month in March. And until he gets back, he's not going to make any decisions. And perhaps that's a good idea. Maybe some time passing and some perspective, he can reflect on what's happened in all manner of areas about what he needs to do regarding his team, strategy, all sorts of stuff. Jason says Usyk will beat Chisora 8th round. Murat Gassiev should forget about the heavyweight division and go to undisputed in cruiserweight, says BOP Boxing Observer podcast. Yeah, it's interesting, the whole move up from Murat Gassiev being injury prone, fights falling through because of that. He really hasn't fired a shot in over 18 months, and is heavyweight just too much for him or something? Physically, I mean, just the adapting to the heavier weight seems to be more injury prone now. So Isaac says, who's the best heavyweight in the world right now, Fury or Wilder's costume? The memes will never go away. This is going to hang around for a long time. Eddie says, rumours say Gassiev hits really hard. Why not give heavyweight a go? Lubuck says Gassiev has sparked out heavyweights in sparring. And Chris Areola, who's faced Deontay Wilder, says Gassiev hits the hardest that he's ever faced. Tony says, any thoughts on Joyce versus Dubois? Yeah, it's a great fight. I'll have more on that in the coming sort of weeks as we get closer to that. That's going to sneak up fast. I mean, April the 11th, what's that, about 6 or 7 weeks away now? UK Ghost says that Wilder can't make adjustments. He's nearly 35. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. He's relied on his power for his entire career, and now it's too far gone. Yeah, it's dangerous to write someone off completely, though. I mean, remembering when Joshua lost, the knives were out. People said he couldn't do it, couldn't change his style. He was too stiff, too robotic. People were calling for his retirement and all sorts of nonsense. But he proved people wrong. So, you can never rule anyone out. So Dats says Miller vs. Parker is interesting. Miller can go 12. Can he go 12 now? I mean, I want to see him in this first fight, or actually a fight where he's pushed deeper into the fight to see what the gas tank is like now. I mean, it's just hard to say. And I've lost my place again, so I might just go further down. I'll just have a quick scroll through. Nah, lost it. I think I've gone so far back I can't go back where I was. So I'm just going to have to catch up to the start of the top of the chat here. So there's a lot of messages deleted and a lot of messages. Yeah, what's that about? So Watcher is deleting a lot of messages. So are you saying stuff at me and then deleting it? I mean, you have been talking a lot of nonsense this week in my comment sections, and now you're talking a lot of nonsense in my live stream. You're entitled to your opinion, but I don't have to agree with you. And I actually do think you're wrong on some of the Deontay Wilder stuff. You came out and said he hasn't made any excuses. I mean, what nonsense is that? So BOP Boxing Observer Podcast. Anybody else want to see Alexander Usyk versus Joseph Parker after their next fight? That just sounds perfect to me. Usyk can try against a hard chin, and Joseph can go up against a tricky, smart fighter. Yeah, it's an interesting fight, and I think it would be competitive for quite a few rounds, but Usyk may start to take over later on. It depends on Joseph Parker and his gas tank. It's always been a bit of a question. He goes through sort of like a conservation sort of mode for energy mid-rounds. He has been in better condition and better shape recently, and it'll be interesting to see what he tips the scales out for the Winters fight. He's obviously, since his loss to Joshua and White, he's kept himself in better condition instead of ballooning up between fights. So, yeah, more dedication to the sport. Hopefully he can get some big fights. So Martin says Wilder Fury 3 may be difficult to finance. Possibly, but yeah, I'm interested. I know a lot of people don't want to see the rematch, but I want to see it. I think there's a lot of interesting storylines. I think, the whole, can Deontay Wilder get some revenge? Can he try to do something that people think he can't do, which is improve? I mean, there's some interesting storylines. Can Fury repeat the dominance? Where are we in the chat here? Just going through a zillion deleted comments. So Cash for Cat says Huey Fury is fighting at the O2, I think. He's fighting on March the 7th, is he? Pavel Sauer. Christopher says Israel Adesanya talked about the tall poppy syndrome during his Hellberg Award speech. What do you think about that? Yeah, I think there is, still some tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand. It's maybe not as big as it once was, but yeah, sometimes, they grow too tall in terms of their hype and sometimes it depends what they say too. So Blue Collar Sports TV is in the chat here. That's Del Boy. He says big up Boxing Squared and chat. Jamie says everywhere you see the Watcher, he comments absolute rubbish. Okay, there's a bit of a theme of that coming through in the chat. Will says, Watcher is a cool dude, but seriously needs to be real. Nash says, Buddy says Parker is a bum. I think that's taking things a bit far. He needs a big fight, though. I mean, no one's excited about a Shaundale Winters fight. And you know, they're charging $40 in New Zealand for that card. There is no DAZN here, so you know the way to watch it is on pay-per-view. $40. So yeah, make of that what you will. Not very happy with that. So Nash says, Boxing Squared, the best boxing channel out there, makes me proud to be a Kiwi. Shame about the embarrassing Big Boys Boxing channel. What's your issue with Big Boys Boxing? Yeah, he does a lot of really good content. He's a buddy of mine too. So what's the issue there? So Unga says Wilder's weight had no bearing on the outcome. So Stella says, I notice you always try to pronounce fighters' names well, so could I please correct you on Usyk? His name is pronounced like Alexander, same as Povetkin's. Well, there's a whole thing with Usyk where half the media and even BoxRec and others have it as Alexander Usyk. So I've just kind of gone for Alexander because that seems to be part of it. But then there's others that have Alexander. So I'm waiting for some sort of definitive. Even Eddie Hearn calls him Alexander Usyk. So yeah, if I can get something definitive on that, I will be saying Alexander. So Saint Beelzebub says, Watcher is alright. He's just a passionate Wilder fan. He doesn't get nasty. We need both sides, otherwise it'd get boring. Yeah, I mean, there's a point in that, but there's also being real about some of these things as well. Saying that Deontay Wilder hasn't come out with a lot of excuses this week, refusing to acknowledge that there is any excuses, I mean, to me, that is just, unreasonable. Who are all these people, Alexei, ready for? Can someone hide them from it's just spamming the channel at this point. Okay, I'm just going straight down to the chat. So yeah, so Lubak says $40 is scandalous. It really is. Saint Beelzebub says, I said it was good to see more ladies in the channel, but bloody hell didn't expect all these lady bots. Yeah, what is that about? Is that something advertising a service or something? Is someone able to put them on timeout or something like that? Max says, who do you think would win if Ruiz fought Dillian? Andy Ruiz. I would totally pick Andy Ruiz in that fight. Sam says, if he's in shape. Sam says Fury laid the blueprint on how to beat Wilder, jab and nullify his right hand to wear him out. Yeah, it sounds easy, but easier said than done. Fury, that was a special performance. AZ says, Parker's 2019 was very poor. I like the guy, but he's not fighting anyone. Well, he did have the Chisora opportunity in October, but, that fell through. Watcher says, I was wrongly accused of deleting messages. What is going on here? There was some deleted messages, but there's also some sort of bot in the chat as well, putting messages around. I don't know what happened, but yeah, you're entitled to your opinion, Watcher, but I'm going to call you on it if you say that there's no excuses that Wilder has made. I know you're a passionate Wilder fan, and apart from, in terms of Wilder the fighter, I do think Wilder is a good fighter. I think the people that rubbish him, sort of do so at their peril, because he has got himself out of some tricky situations with the right hand. He can win some big fights in the heavyweight division. Even now, Fury is a nightmare-style matchup for most heavyweights in the division. We knew that if Fury ended up, putting together a game plan and maximising some of his strengths, and he did, and not necessarily the height and the reach in the second fight, but his skills in terms of his movement, the head movement, foot feints, all sorts, that just had Wilder just, not knowing what he was up to, and he couldn't deal with the pressure well and ultimately got picked apart and beaten up. You're entitled to your opinion, but I will call you out on it if you think that, there's no excuses. To me, that is not a realistic opinion. So BOP Boxing Observer Podcast, I remember yelling at Dillian, is it Dillian or Dylan? Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying it Dylan White, but I've heard him say Dillian, but yeah. Stella says, Boxing Squared, the Ukrainian O is pronounced as an A. Okay. Thank you for that. Kella says, try going on an LDBC chat room. They will block you before you even get a chance to speak. The Bronze Plumber says, Watcher, you're pushing Wilder BS. Take the L like a man and perhaps talk about what Wilder should do to improve for the rematch. Hardline Boxing Talk, that's aka the Boxing Librarian. It would not be easy for other heavyweights to replicate what Fury did. Yeah, I mean, exactly. There's not too many 6'9" heavyweights that have impeccable movement and boxing skills running around the heavyweight division right now. If someone who was 6 feet to 6'4" tried to do that against Wilder, didn't have good head movement, well, he'd probably take their block off. BOP Boxing Observer Podcast says, I got it right a couple of years ago. The dude is smiling gold. Good for boxing fans too, from what I saw. Buddy says, saying Ruiz isn't in shape is rubbish. People, the man will never have a perfect body like that creep AJ. And come on, he's gone 12 rounds many times. I think you're misinterpreting what people are saying for Ruiz in shape. People are not, I'm not equating Andy Ruiz Jr., having, being a bit sloppy around the middle as him being out of shape. What we're saying is 283 pounds is too much for him, that it needs to be lower, and it hindered his performance. I don't think anyone can deny that at this point. If he was around 260, as he was for the Dimitrenko fight and other fights in his career, he was 255 for the Parker fight, it's proven to be a good weight for him. But 283, that was not a good weight. So Jamie says, Wilder's a great fighter, but a terrible boxer. Anyone with movement and confidence will smash him up, in my opinion. Christopher says, it's a coincidence. Is it a coincidence that Joseph Parker has the same last name as the Spider-Man character Peter Parker? I think it is. I really do think it is. Watcher says, Fury bullied him and done him up. George Michael says, a resume that contains a draw with Fury is far superior to wins over Parker, White Povetkin, Ghost of Vlad, plus Wilder had Prime Stavern on his resume too. Simple as that. It's a hot take there from George Michael. He's still got the faith. The Bronze Plumber says Fury equals worst cherry picker ever. That's another hot take. Will Wilder be a great fighter with his left hand tied behind his back? Well, it's effectively how he's fought for some of his career. So BOP Boxing Observer Podcast, a boxing librarian, awesome. Yeah, he's got a great channel with a lot of historical context on, I want to say hundreds of fighters now. I know he's been building the library for some time now. It's, if you can think of a fighter, he's got a video on them. So Watcher says that, where are we? Chat just caught up on me. Sorry, I'll just find my place again. It's moving pretty quickly. So we'll try to wrap it up in the next 10 minutes or so. It's approaching 11:30 here. Wilder needs to jab more. He can't lean back and be flat-footed. He needs to be more active with his punches and move his head a bit more. Yeah, all of that is true, but a lot of that he's been doing for a long time. It was quite interesting. There was a Boxing Voice interview where they had, or it was a live show, they had Ronnie Shields on there, and he was saying, what are they doing in training camp? Because he's seen a lot of footage of things that they're doing, but Wilder's not doing them in fights. So he said, Shouldn't they be trying to teach him things that he can translate to the ring? And, it sounds like a simple idea, but, it's a very good point. So George Michael says, I agree with all views tonight, but Wilder's resume is far superior than all resumes but Fury. All he has is a draw with an all-time great. Simple as that. It's not any more complex than that. So St. Beelzebub says, Boxing Squared, how do you think Parker would hold up against Wilder if he's allowed to work on the inside? It'd be an interesting matchup. Yeah, I think Parker's speed would be an issue, but Parker's reach, obviously he's going to have a disadvantage of about 6 inches or so over Deontay Wilder, 3 inches in height. For those guys that are in that range, 6'2 to 6'4, Deontay Wilder can manage his range a lot better against them than he can against Tyson Fury, who's the bigger and lengthier guy. So John Fury is a real character. Hay had to swallow some pride. Yeah, but he came out and said, look, he got the wrong, pick. Who's this? I can't even read the name. Can you time that bot that's coming in? The messages get deleted, but I guess you click on the name to go whatever live site they've got going. Froz Richard says, I'd love to see Fury Joshua, but I'd also love to see how Deontay Wilder handles the build-up to a third fight with Fury. His invincibility cloak is now gone. It was probably a bit heavy anyway. Ruthless. For me, part of the interest for a third fight is the build-up too. Obviously, Deontay Wilder has to do some soul-searching and restructure his team. Maybe they've got to come up with a better game plan. He's got to do some of the fundamentals a bit better. As Watcher was just saying before, the jab has got to be a bit better. But he knows what Fury can do now. Fury can beat him on the front foot, but also the back foot. And it wouldn't surprise me if he mixed up, this is Fury, his game plan again, and he ends up being southpaw for big parts of a third fight. But the lead up to a third fight, with the potential trolling from Fury, it really could be quite interesting. So Hardline Boxing Talk says, I think Wilder could change, but do you agree the biggest hurdle to that will be his ego? Yeah, I think he'll be his own worst enemy with some of this. This week after the fight has proven that his pride, his ego is in the way. He's blaming everyone else except his own performance. Will says, apparently Wilder doesn't want to change personally. JD says, I agree, not everyone can beat Wilder the same way like Fury did, because the feints are important, but they are similar ways to beat Wilder with that template. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there was an open question, for a while about, what if someone started beating Deontay Wilder to the body and really trying to invest there, or getting up on his chest and trading hooks and working on the inside. And I think we've seen that Wilder's inside game needs a lot of work. But at this point, can he make any adjustments? I don't know. Falling way behind in the chat already. I was just on it. Where are we here? So 98 in the chat, so if you can smash that like button, that would be much appreciated. Wherever you are in the world, morning, noon or night, hope you're having a good one. Friday night here, 11:20 p.m. What do you make of this Matchroom card this weekend? Joseph Parker, obviously, versus Shawndell Winters. It's, it is what it is. But I don't mind the rest of the card. A couple of decent fights. Main event, obviously, you've got Chocolate Tito back as well versus Kao Yafai. I kind of like the card. I mean, it's not the biggest card in the world with the most competitive fights overall, but in the context of, the last few weeks in terms of evenly matched cards or, some name recognition too. I mean, there's a bit of everything sort of thrown in there. So Sam says Wilder needs to start from scratch and learn how to box, also face the elite. The only elite fights are the Fury fights. Even Ortiz is not top 5. Okay, there's a lot of people debating the resumes, so I'll just skip past that. So James Challoner deleting every comment in history that he's put in the chat. Not sure what that's about. So BOP Boxing Observer podcast says, just my opinion, a short heavyweight akin to Mike Tyson would be kryptonite for these taller boxers. Problem is that boxer doesn't exist right now. Well, I think we've got, guys that have tried to imitate that style. I mean, there's James Wilson, that's he's a golden boy fighter now these days, but hasn't really sort of gone anywhere, and obviously he's had a bit of fame from social media with certainly scripted type workout routines that have got millions of views. But yeah, he struggled in the ring to some extent. I mean, Oscar Rivas is that sort of smaller mold, 6 foot power puncher, but he's not knocking everyone out. But so I agree. I mean, there's certainly guys that do some things like a Tyson, but not nearly as well as him, or they're missing certain other things as well. So Alex says, can you imagine how poorly Wilder will cope with trying to adapt if the third fight is in June, July? He doesn't have anything like the basic boxing background Fury and Joshua had. Yeah, they're looking to push that out towards the back end of the year, so maybe he will get a few more months than otherwise he would have had in the original contract. But even in a couple of months, if they can work some basic things, adjustments, it's going to be pretty hard for them to plan for Fury, because he's shown a different sort of side of himself in both fights, and he could do so again in the third. So Cash for Cat says Chocolatito wins by KO against Yafai. St. Beelzebub says, how do you think Lucas Brown versus Hughie Fury would go? I think Fury probably knocks out Lucas Brown. That was another topic on my list. So he's facing Abdi Davtayev on March 28th now. Otto Wallin, some sort of minor foot injury, which to me seems a little suspect after Wilder's loss to Fury. Wallin's stock, or Valin's stock, has gone up sort of by default because he had a halfway decent performance against Fury. So I think probably they've had a better offer for a different card and they're going to take it. And Dmitry Salita, Otto Valin's promoter, has plugged in another one of his heavyweights, Abdi Davtayev, who is a bit of an unknown quantity. He's 20 fights with 1 draw on the record. Who knows how good he is? So D. Hodges says, if Mikey don't beat Vargas, he better go back to 140. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people sort of say this in the last week or two. Yeah, Mikey Garcia is just a lock for the win. But, at 140 against Sergey Lipinets, that was a pretty tough fight. And then obviously it was a virtual shutout against Spence. So I'm interested to see him at 147 against a guy like Vargas, who's not as good as Spence, but still, has his own virtues. So if he does struggle or even lose, certainly 140 might be the avenue for Mikey Garcia. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big fights that can be held around those sort of 135, 140, and 147 for a number of guys. So, it's not just, welterweight and, heavyweight or at middleweight that's sort of on fire now. You've got a lot of divisions that are doing really well. So Will says he thinks America needed a heavyweight title holder, probably won't have one for a while, it seems. Well, things can change fast in the heavyweight division. But yeah, at the start of the channel, I did a video which talked about when America is strong in terms of its boxing, the sport sort of thrives. And, I still believe that to a large extent, but the pipeline of guys coming through, it's looking like, it's not the gush that it used to be back in the old days. It's sort of more of a trickle now. And Sam says Mikey needs to drop down again to 140, stop this madness. Benjo says technically Povetkin passed the B sample, hence why he won the legal case against Wilder. Angus says, Cash for Cat, I love Chocolatito, but have money down on Yafai. Well, there's an argument, yeah, Chocolatito, his best days are behind him, but Yafai, who I believe is the longest reigning champ from the UK, he hasn't been fighting that often either. What's he got left? Stella says, Boxing Squared, do you still run a Patreon account? If so, what kind of content do you have on there? Do you discuss topics other than boxing like Hatman? I do still have a Patreon account, so there's different tiers, and mostly it's still boxing, but a lot of the time I try to pick topics. It's not always possible, but say if you subscribed in a couple of months, that topic is still something that you can listen to, and it's still relevant, and it's a bit timeless. So I try to pick things that hold up in time for that at least for a few weeks or months or sometimes years. That but yeah, there's different tiers that open up different sort of videos and that sort of stuff. Like one tier, I do a couple of extra videos, but on the basic tier you get one video a week, that sort of stuff. But I have done other bits and pieces before that are sort of boxing related, but not for some time. But if you do want to check it out, you can always go to the Boxing Squared Patreon page. There's no obligation to sign up, but you can have a look and sort of see some of the titles and other bits and pieces. Sometimes in the run up to big fights I do different bits and pieces. Most of my sort of Boxing Squared top 10s or top 15s, that's where they go. There's stuff like that I just do on Patreon. At the start of the year, it's like year ahead stuff, for my prospects, also predictions for the year, stuff like that I run on there. So Scott70, anyone put in timeout or comments deleted have never left a comment on a Boxing Squared vid. So Watcher says, Oscar Rivas reminds me of Mike. Rivas, technically very good, impressive. How White beat him, feints and jabs. And I think Rivas got a little tired in there. I mean, he is a very bulky guy too. I mean, I think maybe that's cost him a little bit in terms of energy reserves, but it's not like he's really ever been exposed before for it. But he did slow down a bit in that fight. So Hardline Boxing Talk says, I enjoyed your video on the possibility of Ruiz Jr. vs Ortiz. A good fight. I also find it strange why he would need a warm-up. Yeah, I mean, once he does the tune-up, when's that fight going to be? Like in a year's time? By that time, I mean, Ortiz is still a very good fighter, but there's diminishing returns the older he gets about how much credit people are willing to give you for beating him. So yeah, I find it sort of strange about what he's going to do, why he would need the warm-up, and yeah, it does seem a bit bizarre. And why would he need 6 months? He's targeting August. Why would he need 6 months and then have a tune-up? I can't work it out. It's just, yeah. So if you haven't seen that video, that went up a couple of hours ago. And yeah, Ortiz saying he needs a tune-up before he faces Ortiz. Yeah, it's a bit strange. Alex says, I think the build-up to Wilder Fury 3 would break Wilder. It depends how much Fury can really sort of put the foot on the throat. And I think he would. I mean, remembering he sort of said years ago in a tweet that he wouldn't knock out Deontay Wilder with one punch. He would punish him. And some of the things that he said, I mean, I know that he throws out scattergun stuff all the time, but it ended up sort of coming off. So people have pointed to it in the week after. But I could see him doing all sorts of mind games, similar stuff that he did to sort of Klitschko, really throw him off his game. And if Deontay Wilder's a little bit vulnerable right now in terms of the loss and how he's feeling, and in the build-up to a third fighter who wants to redeem himself, Fury might be able to get some gains on that end. As we know, the mental aspect of boxing is important, and it can have factor in a fight. Wilder said the first time that he got anxious and went away from his game plan, and ultimately that benefited Fury, banking rounds, and that helped him obviously get the draw, a fight that a lot of people thought that he won. So John says, could be worth a note that Fury's literally the only man in the whole division that has the reach advantage on Wilder. Not True, there's other fighters that do have same or bigger reaches. I mean, one guy, F.A. Jagber, he's 84 inches, so that's one off the top of my head. There are other fighters, some big fighters too, remembering there is some guys that are coming up. Remember the one guy, Christian Thun, he is actually, he's 6'9". Ivan Deichko, he's 6'9". They've got bigger reaches than Wilder, but Thun was the guy that Wilder, he was sparring with. This was a couple of months before the first Fury fight, before training camp began, a couple of months before that, so 5 months out from fight night or whatever. He was the one that Wilder hit on the elbow and broke his hand or arm or whatever it was, the right hand. So that was him, Christian Thun. So there's some big units sort of rolling around the heavyweight division, but some of these guys like Thun, Deichko, there's a few others that are big units. They seem to be making very good money from sparring, but not really progressing their professional careers. So the bronze plumber says, is Dave Allen and Ortiz's top 3 wins? I guess, Allen has a win over a former world champion in Lucas Brown, who had one loss on the record at that point. Maybe someone might argue that. I think Jennings is clearly the best. Christian Hammer might be the second best. Kajanu, is he better than Allen? I don't know. There's a few wins earlier in his career that he's got that are actually okay. I don't want to get into it now because I don't want this to be a Luis Ortiz hate fest, because sometimes these things can devolve into it. But Ortiz is a quality fighter. He's had some bad management, but also some opportunities have been denied. But at the end of the day, when he did step up to world title fights, he lost them both. So Jason says Huey Fury should go to the Kronk gym. I think his dad might disown him if that happened. So UK Rob Boxing says the ego and arrogance won't allow Wilder to progress. The advice in the corner was you got to back him up. Didn't tell him how though. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of good advice coming out of the corner, sort of throw the right hand D, that sort of stuff. There's been a lot of people as you well know, Rob, with Ronnie Shields really going in on the corner on the Boxing Voice. It really didn't spare the corner, it was going in to a large degree. But I don't think Dees will, be out of the fray. He'll continue. Breland, obviously, big question mark. So I was just looking at the time. So we're going to be going for 2 hours already. Geez, that went fast. My water bottle's almost gone here too. So we'll go for another 5 minutes or so. I've already fallen behind in the chat, so apologies. Say, Hardline Boxing Talk says he'd say Ortiz's 3 best wins in no order: Christian Hammer, Bryant Jennings, and maybe Tony Thompson. Yeah, it's the third one, the third win, which is the one that I think is the question mark and is a bit debatable. And there's some earlier wins in his career, but Tony Thompson was a bit faded at that point as well. But yeah, his resume is probably a bit thinner than it really should be given his talent level. I don't think people can deny Luis Ortiz is a talented fighter. Where are we? I'll just try to catch up on the chat here. So Punch Quote says, you'll have to back Fury up with combinations. I think only AJ can do that because he has power in both hands. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting when Fury fights other fighters, not named Deontay Wilder. Is he going to continue after the third Wilder fight? What are his motivation levels going to be? And I was going to be doing a video about this sort of stuff over the weekend because it's a bit of an unanswered question. Even though we're talking about Fury, could he, continue what he's doing in the third fight? The question has to be asked, what are his motivation levels going to be for a third fight against a guy that he feels he's already beaten twice, and the second time, the second fight decisively. It really, where does that factor into the sort of equation? Because it's easy to say he'll just repeat the dose, but can he, stay up for it mentally? Ben Davidson's not on the scene really anymore. Tyson Fury needs to stay motivated. And some of the other fights that are on the offing, like Anthony Joshua, Dillian White, or other big fights, that sort of stuff might keep him sort of G'd up mentally. But can a third Wilder fight? I think it's an open question. So Will says, you done well, BS. Love the chat. Big up. Great subs as well. Thank you, Will, for joining the chat. Christopher says, the only challenge for AJ versus Fury is finding a stadium that is big enough for the event. I think it would break the current venue record, which was Chavez's fight in Mexico. What sounds like that would go to Saudi Arabia or someone else. So Benjo says, yeah, big up Boxing Squared. Great chat. Thank you for that, Benjo. Simple Boy says Wilder has only KO'd one top fighter in old tees, but he couldn't find a Fitzstevern and couldn't stop a 60% Fury. Yeah, I guess the thing in 2015 when he fought Berman Stavern, there was a lot of questions about Deontay Wilder, and there was a lot of questions after he beat Stavern, but he showed he could box in that fight. He did use his jab in that fight, and Stavern at that point was still considered, I believe in the world at the time, as about the number 4 fighter. So it was at the time. I mean, sure, you can look at it now and go, oh, Stavern didn't really have a flourishing career, sort of paper champion or whatever, but he did have a couple of decent wins, and he got to a point where he was considered one of the better heavyweights in the world. So some of these things are point in time. So who is there to fight Fury next if Wilder doesn't take the rematch, as Eddie Hearn is chatting out his ass? He knows he's keeping AJ and Dillian for a pay-per-view coming up. Well, if Wilder does not take the rematch, and every indication he will, it's a question. I mean, if there is an Alexander Povetkin fight for White and he wins that, and there's no one for Fury, maybe Fury and White would happen later in the year. I don't know. So Napoli says, when is Hrgovic's next fight? Good question. A lot of chatter about a potential Martin Bakole fight, but with some of these Matchroom pay-per-views that are coming up, and we're going to have pay-per-views coming out our ears, they haven't been confirmed. The Joshua and Pulev fight, there's Dillian White and Alexander Povetkin, Usyk Chisora. He'll be fighting on one of those cards, and it sounds like it might be Martin Bakole, but if it's not, hopefully it's someone who can give him some rounds. Jesus, you guys put a lot of comments. I'm just trying to, it's hard keeping up with this. So King Yucky Sober says, enjoy the videos, mate. I think you're probably the most impartial scene commentator on YouTube. Keep up the great work. Thank you for that. Where are we? Rob says, I was going to go to work this morning, but when I took off my 45-pound pajama legs, I went into jelly, so I stayed home. I don't think we're going to hear the end of those type of jokes, and I've seen memes galore on the internet. It's not going to be lived down like David Hayes' toe. So Ty says, hello people, I guess I'm late. Good morning from Nebraska, USA. Yeah, we're about to wrap up here in a couple of minutes. I'll just try to whip through a final few comments. Unga says, all resumes are pretty thin. AJ is best, but not overly strong, especially when taking in elite. Yeah, I mean, some of these stories for these fighters, it's point in time at the moment. We'll be able to reflect on some of them once they're done. And if some of these guys end up going on to have, a good round robin with each other, and we get some of these fights that we've all been begging for years, then some of these resumes could look incredibly strong. Or alternatively, if they don't, we might sort of say missed opportunities, the resume could have been better. Stella says, big up Boxing Squared, love the live. Thank you for joining us here, Stella. D Hodges, I really don't follow AJ, that's why I'm asking. Okay, I'm not sure who that's responding to. So Christopher says, during the build-up to the Parker Chisora fight, Chisora kept calling Parker an Australian. As a New Zealander, do you experience that a lot? Well, mostly, especially on YouTube, I get called, people think I'm from the UK. So it seems to be a revelation to people when I say I'm from New Zealand. Or if I happen to have mentioned something about, hey, this Parker card's costing $40 in New Zealand where I am, people who must be new to the channel or just haven't paid attention or whatever, they seem to be blown away and they say, oh, you've been to the I thought you were from the UK. And I get that a lot as well. For people obviously listen and they've got a certain narrative in their head that they're pushing, and they try to push back on me about what I'm saying in a video because they think it's based off some sort of UK perspective because they think I'm from the UK. But then when I bust that bubble and saying, well, I don't have anything against that fighter, I'm not even from the UK, why does that even matter? The argument falls apart. But yeah, I remember Chisora working that Australian line, and I just thought it was just terrible chat. It wasn't to me, it wasn't funny, it wasn't insulting. I thought he needs to get some better trash talk, because it was to me it was lacking. I was like, yeah, Derek Chisora, you got to up your game. I mean, New Zealanders and Australians have, it's like banter, friendly rivalry type thing, and New Zealand is a smaller country. We always like to do well against Australia in sport and that sort of stuff, and because we always thrash them in rugby, we always hold that over them, but for most other sports, Australia hands us losses just all over the show. But for a smaller nation, 6 times smaller than Australia in terms of population, and maybe about 30 times smaller in terms of population mass, we do okay on the world stage, and even against Australia with only 4.5 million people, or 5 million people, whatever it is. But yeah, I think some of the whole banter about New Zealand and Australia, as it pertains to how people from other parts of the world see it and hear it, and they think there's a real beef and a rivalry, it's more friendly than anything. I mean, and it's more of a sporting thing. Jason says Ortiz and Wilder are millionaires through boxing. That in itself is a great achievement. Yep, agree with that completely. They've done well for themselves. Christopher says during the build-up to Parker... Oh, okay, you've just said that comment. Hopefully that won't be spammed a few more times. So Paul B says Ortiz is a great fighter based on what? Best win against Washington. No, sorry, he's average. Washington. If he was good or great or a top fighter, he would have beat Wilder. He's an average fat old man. That's a terrible take. Terrible take. Manuel Pap Summit 2008. Give Wilder 100 million step aside for Undisputed. Imagine what they would have to pay for a step aside, because if you're a businessman like Shelley Finkel is, his co-manager, you'd be going for the jugular. He might end up getting as much as the fighters. Okay, so we've got Christopher. You've said that same comment like 85 times. Alex says, cheers for the interactions, Boxing Squared. So nice to have an unbiased boxing channel. Thank you for coming to the channel, supporting the channel. Everyone out there, yeah, really appreciate it. I mean, that's what keeps the channel going. So Napoli says, have a good day. Thanks for the stream, BS. Ty says, who do you think is the A-side between AJ and Fury? I don't think there is one. Ra Hoa says Joshua and White have the most strength and depth in resume, especially if White beats Povetkin and Joshua beats Pulev. Where are we? Just going to scan down the rest of the comments. We'll wrap it up inside the next 2 minutes. So Lubak says, excellent stream as ever, Squared. Catch you soon. A lot of people starting to bail on the stream. I guess I've been foreshadowing it's about to end. We're coming up to midnight here in New Zealand. Will says, New Zealand, for a small country, do crazy well at sports and business. Need a wall build to keep New Zealanders out of Australia. Yeah, I mean, I think there's 500,000 New Zealanders in Australia. So the day-to-day population in New Zealand is 5 million or something close to that, and then there's 500,000 New Zealanders who can get into Australia. Yeah, there's a lot of Kiwis all over the place, including a lot of my family too, or some of my family I should say. So Michael says, where in New Zealand are you from? I'm from the Wellington region. Michael says, is there any chance Joshua vacates? If so, who will Pulev fight? I think they'll get that fight over the line. I think Bob Arum and Kubrat Pulev saying they're going to take it to a purse bid, I think that's bluster. They're trying to get a few concessions, a few things over the line that they're pushing for. They're making it a public issue, trying to put Eddie Hearn under pressure. I still think it happens on June 20 in the UK at the Tottenham Stadium. Chase says, great unbiased channel, thank you very much. Sam says, Boxing Squared, great work as usual, have a great one. Thank you for that, and thank you for coming. So slowly the viewers are dipping down, as I say I'm about to leave. So yeah, I will wrap it up. Boxing Squared, great work. I just read that one. Who beat... Okay, got Washington again. Okay, we'll wrap it up now. I could just keep going on and on and on. So we'll be back here next Friday. I'm starting to flag now. So everyone have a good weekend. Get your picks in. What round does Parker win? If in fact, does it go the distance, or does Shaundale Winters pull something out of thin air? I'm not expecting it, but who knows? It could happen. But yeah, I was about to say drop a comment loud and often, but it's not kind of one of those videos. So yeah, I am getting tired. So I'll call it a day there. Pull stumps. Have a great weekend, and we'll be here back same time next week, 9:30 New Zealand time.